field like this. And our next speaker, Dr. Thomas Vallone, has all those credentials. He certainly is a leader in the field of new energy, has been for a long time. He's president of the Integrity Research Institute. He consults with members of Congress on new energy issues as well, and is roundly recognized as one of the true pioneers in this field. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Thomas Vallone.
Thank you very much. I'll put this on the view. There we go, now we're all set. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. And I'm happy to be here and participate in this very seminal and vital movement. And I've known Brian for years. In fact, it's been a pleasure to collaborate whenever we've had a chance to talk on our similar interests. And oftentimes in meetings like this, I basically try to gauge the audience's interest and also knowledge on the various topics that we're talking about. Today, I've been asked to give a very broad understanding and broad description of a number of very, I feel, clean energy, productive, what we call future energy developments that often are overlooked because of the fact there aren't strong lobbying groups presenting these to the media and to the public. So let me begin with an introduction. And I don't know if many of you are aware of global warming, but let me give you a couple slides of information about it. Not only do we know today that 85% of our country's energy comes from combustion of dead fossils, which is a dirty fuel which can only propagate something that's dirty and also negative. So the consequences of that is the negativity we're seeing in our planet, which many of us think of as the Gaia principle, a living organism that's overheating. And essentially 85% is a huge number. It's an overwhelming challenge for our political leaders to even address. And I just heard recently on the news, CNN reported that this is the first time since records were kept back in 1851 that 4 hurricanes have hit one state in one season. This is a direct consequence of global warming. As the International Climate Committee predicted, thermal forcing of a system like the Earth's climate, even a couple degrees, causes more kinetic energy to be available for things like hurricanes and tornadoes. In fact, the predictions have already been made for 300-mile-an-hour tornadoes and whatever category hurricane that you can't imagine. So, and ironically, on the plane over here, I get to see the Day After Tomorrow movie one more time. Is the man upstairs trying to tell me something or what? So I think there's a message here to be looked at. And the important details, which there are lots of details about global warming, and there's arguments on both sides, but the facts of the matter is we're depending on what I've pointed out as fossil fuels, and hopefully some of these are readable. In my computer, it is readable. But I'll translate things that are not very well contrasted on the screen if that's true. The important point about Hubbert's peak, which when it was first proposed, I didn't think we'd see much of it in the scientific literature. But now Hubbert's peak is being talked about. This is a book that you can actually purchase on Hubbert's peak by a fellow that worked with Hubbert. And I used to teach environmental science at a community college for years, and we used to cite Hubbert's work. He's a very famous environmentalist. So his prediction of the United States peak on oil production was exactly on the mark. Within a year or two, we've been downhill ever since for the US production. Now, the world production, of course, is a little bit debatable. He's predicting around 2000 or so. You can see dotted lines there, but give it 2010, the experts say, and we're downhill from there too, no matter what happens in Iraq. So the important point here is we've got a double-edged sword that's aiming toward us. The global warming issue, which is threatening coastal cities everywhere in the world, besides the destructive power of hurricanes, and of course the oil that we depend upon so heavily for a few decades, which could have been reversed even back in the Nixon era. Does anyone know that President Nixon actually wanted to make us completely independent of foreign oil by 1980? Back in the 70s, that was his proclamation. But of course, lots of things changed since then, even within a year or so after he proclaimed that. So the important point here is whether or not it peaks one way or the other, the Earth is the most important. We're part of the Earth. And when you look at the facts of the issue in regards to carbon dioxide, the most abundant greenhouse gas, we've not only exceeded the 300 parts per million level, which is higher than it's been in the past 400,000 years. Now, keep in mind, that's 4 ice ages backwards. So through the most severe weather the Earth can produce, we still have not seen this level of carbon dioxide, or thermal forcing, in other words, which is a heat-trapping gas. But it's expected by 2050 rather, to double. And we can only speculate what that will mean. And while I'm finishing with this global warming topic, one fact that I wanted to emphasize, and I have several slides on this topic, I can keep going on and talk just on this, is that the poles, the North and South poles, experience twice the warming, and it's way back in the textbooks, I even looked it up to make sure, twice the warming as the temperate zones. So no matter what global warming you experience, or we experience in our North American environment, the Arctic and the Antarctic are experiencing twice that degree change. In fact, the graphs diverge. You literally see the twice, 2 times the temperature. There's lakes at the Arctic Circle. At the North Pole, it's literally a lake. And the ice is twice as thin as it was, in other words, half as thin as it was in 1980. So these are real factual problems. And when the Arctic ice cap disappears, I didn't say if, I said when, it's projected with less than 20 years, we will literally have the albedo completely changed around the North Pole. Right now it's reflective, it sends solar energy back out into space. When there's only water there, it's going to absorb even more. This is a compounding issue that experts are fearful of what that will mean. So we need to act quickly. And furthermore, as we look at what we've been doing so far with energy and electricity, let me put an aside, a little bit of humor here. What is electricity but electrons? I heard a joke recently that said Thomas Edison was a brilliant inventor. It was actually Tesla, but they give credit to Edison. Because he came up with an invention that he could sell to the customer, and the customer sends back to him so he could resell it to the next person. And that's the electron. You give it right back to the utility companies. And unfortunately, as you can see from this graph, we're literally giving away 2/3 of it. This huge graph from US Energy Association. They did a lot of work to research these facts. And the small amount of quadrillion BTUs that are actually delivered to your door. So this is a very centralized power is a hugely inefficient process for delivering energy. So the important thing is, what can we do? Stabilizing, if we even think about stabilizing the atmosphere, 60–80% reduced emissions normally looks impossible if we look at the conventional picture. And that's unfortunately what most of the experts present, is the conventional assortment of solar, wind, thermal, geothermal, and so forth, hydrogen. And even with all of those at full bore, you're not going to get 60–80% within a reasonable amount of time. Even give it a decade or 2. So this is where we look for dramatic changes, and I'm happy to say the experts are coming around after 25 years being at this. Not only is the 1998 Comprehensive National Energy Strategy asking for expansion of future energy choices, but the Apollo Alliance, which I strongly suggest collaborating with the new energy movement, because the Apollo Alliance has a very important focus, and that is to have an Apollo project, exactly like the Apollo project, heavily supported financially, which Senator Hillary Clinton calls for, Apollo-sized smart energy project, mainly for freedom from foreign oil. And of course, recently, we've seen the science magazines and other journals report the planning for future energy resources and energy without carbon dioxide completely. But they can't quite imagine how that could take place. So you see at the very bottom this desperate appeal to literally our side. In other words, I feel aligned with the free energy movement. I have for 25 years. I've been castigated, criticized, and dismissed, but I'm here to stay, and I find that there's tremendous facts and discoveries that are being made that really represent our future. So when you see in 2004 here, June, LA Times, 18 scientists get together and say, we need entirely new carbon-free technologies. This is wonderful, because they're finally coming to our door, which is where they should have been in the beginning with a few dollars, too. But with or without money, I'm telling you, the scientists, the backroom inventors, the garage inventors, they're really, once in a while, I have to say, coming up with tremendous breakthroughs. So our institute basically tries to filter all the different emerging energy and bioenergy technologies. Right now, we're focused on scientific integrity devoted to energy research, and what you find is a lot of disparity between the inventors working on the project and the investors who have their agenda. So what we find is that to get those two parties together, you need a lot of common ground. In other words, the inventor has to then present the invention so it's patentable, so it's a business plan type of project. He knows where he's headed with the invention. And then the investor can foresee his return on investment. And then we can find some support. And I'm happy to report we've been successful in at least one case, and partially successful in another already, to find investors willing to put money forth on a very vital, robust energy source. And of course, we've done market studies in the past. And if anyone is interested, we also produce what's called Future Energy e-News. You can send me an email at iri@erols.com, that's E-R-O-L-S, or you can go to our website, integrityresearchinstitute.org, and sign up for it. It's free, it's sent out once a month, and it's really the reporting of the most profound breakthroughs in the future energy movement. We've had conferences, of course, we've had workshops, we've now produced a magazine for our members, and here's some of the samplings of various publications that we've come forward with. So the interesting thing is that in terms of, for example, the bioenergy area, this is the only slide on that topic. I've done some consulting too, and this was the outcome of a one-year project to reduce a 4-foot tall invention into a suitcase model. Presumably it won't keep forwarding. And I think I'm okay so far. Okay, that should do it. Thank you. It did, it worked. So the discovery in the bioenergy area, to simplify a 45-minute talk on that topic, is that electrons are antioxidants. Big discovery. Every vitamin pill you take, every vitamin C, vitamin A, and so forth is trying to carry little electrons to your body. So once again, electrons are magical bullets that literally are the ones the free radicals are looking to scavenge. And they continue to scavenge until they grab some. So you can do this electrically, which is wonderful. And I have to give credit to Jim Oshman. Dr. Jim Oshman, in his book, found the same discovery. I've witnessed some presentations and collaborated with him a little bit. The high voltage experience, being close to high voltage, non-contacting high voltage, is also very helpful because our own bodies literally maintain 10 million volts per meter, or 100,000 volts per centimeter across every cell membrane. So we're an electrical body, body electric, in other words, as Dr. Becker said. and to move on to how this energy, how this energetic body of ours should interact with the energetic system we find ourselves in, which is the Earth, we're starting out today with the topic of atmospheric electricity. And we're also going to cover the new breakthroughs in nuclear energy. Nuclear energy for years has had a very bad rap, and it turns out there are clean processes for using nuclear, and these are ones you hardly ever hear about. And of course, the main buzz today is on zero-point energy. In fact, if you look at the latest issue, September 2004 of Scientific American, you'll see the description in there of zero-point energy. And in fact, just to give you a little preview, empty space is not really empty, to quote Scientific American. Instead, virtual particle-antiparticles pairs pop out of the vacuum. And if I go on, he says, once we accept this premise, we should be prepared to contemplate the possibility that these virtual particles might endow empty space with some non-zero energy. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about. And so Einstein's cosmological term for the expansion, the accelerated expansion of the universe, is obligatory rather than optional. And that's the latest news. It's fascinating to see the media finally catch up with this stuff. And lastly, we'll be looking at the most exciting topic, I feel, and then to space propulsion. So to begin with, the interesting part about atmospheric electricity is that Benjamin Franklin invented it. It's an all-American invention. And the electric motor, the electrostatic motor, has a rich history. One operated for over 86 years. The ionosphere is charged to hundreds of thousands of volts, constantly refurbished by lightning. The ground itself is full of electrons. One easy invention you can go home with today is to literally put a copper or a steel rod into the ground, tie a little wire to your bed, and put the wire all the way around your mattress. And you literally get a trickle current from the ground, which is full of electrons, into your body all night long. And if you instead, like Jeff Fomenko is describing, Dr. Jeff Fomenko is the Professor Emeritus from West Virginia University. He proposed putting up an antenna, which is what Benjamin Franklin's famous for as well. And as you do that, you literally go through thousands of volts that then can transfer itself through the antenna to one of these electrostatic motors. And Jeff Fomenko, both of these drawings actually are from his American Journal of Physics from 1971. He describes the invention that he added, which was the electret. And it's a waxy substance that you let solidify under a high voltage field, and it maintains a charge, much like a magnet. And this intensifies and improves the performance of the electrostatic motor. So what he said in his paper at our conference on future energy in '99 is that the electrostatic motor is literally an underutilized technology. The atmosphere itself has 200 gigawatts of potential energy available, and especially in the Midwest, this area, for example, is very ripe for atmospheric energy, where it's a dry climate in most of the year. And this is also a corroboration of what I just said. This is Scientific American from 1974. It's saying exactly what I just pointed out, that they're powered from the electric field of the Earth. And below that, you see the diagram of the antenna tied to the motor going directly into the ground. And what Jeff Fomenko pointed out too is that if you put a tiny little bit of, in this case, polonium, he recommends, it's a beta emitter, electron emitter only. Very safe, can be stopped by a piece of paper. That tends to ionize the air, so you get even better conduction from your antenna. And so that's his basic invention. Now, looking at that, we find that there's plenty of extra ways in which this can be used. One of the most dramatic ways we find is back in 1920, the dates up here are barely readable, where wireless transmission is talked about. Now, this is interesting to me because this particular article describes the same thing I just told you. Instead, they're using ultraviolet beams to essentially create the wire transfer. In other words, the ultraviolet breaks down the air, you get like a lightning bolt path pretty much to your ship or your boat or whatever you've got. And so this is still working on static, electrostatic energy of the ionosphere. If we move over to the next topic, the development of this, Nikola Tesla comes along. He looks at the Earth as a Earth ionosphere cavity, and what he proposes is that we can go a little bit further. And he literally makes measurements for the first time back in 1905 with the, actually this was even before that in Colorado Springs. He made the first measurement of the Earth ionosphere resonant frequency. And I don't know if many people know that the Earth resonates to around 8 hertz. And just to amplify or specify what I'm talking about, if you picture the Earth as a ball, the ionosphere is a bigger ball. It's a sphere around it. Well, it's the same thing as a parallel plate capacitor, only it's round. So when I say the Earth ionosphere cavity, I'm literally talking about the space between two parallel plate capacitors. And what you find is it's just like an LRC circuit, and that's what Tesla found. He could send a pulse from his Colorado Springs laboratory, and then within a certain few seconds, he would receive the pulse back. And in that way, he was able to not only measure and verify the speed of light, but also the resonant frequency of the Earth. And this just happens to be, as we talk about human beings too, the same frequency as our alpha rhythm in the brain. So we're intended to be out in nature where 8 cycles per second is our predominant frequency, which normally is in the nanotesla range, and our brain waves, our MEGs, are in the picotesla range. So we're supposed to be entrained by this very special Schumann cavity resonance. And so this was Tesla's design, to produce a pulsing, electrostatically pulsing dome that most engineers can't figure out why is there a dome on the top there. It's because it's producing a longitudinal discharge of electrostatic wave energy, spherical wave energy, that defies Maxwell's equations. You literally end up with E and B in the same direction. You find it's a scalar wave, it's not a traveling Maxwell type of EM wave. And so you get lots of new benefits from that. 95 to 98% efficient transmission around the Earth, virtually no losses, and you can transmit power level energy through these waves with virtually no attenuation. And of course, having resonant receivers anywhere on Earth. So Dr. James Coram was one of our speakers back in November at our Tesla conference, which celebrated the centennial of the, which is my next slide on this. And what I found from Coram's work is that he's verified all the basic parts of Tesla's theory. This to me was a pie in the sky. Every engineer will tell you it's a pie, it's a dream, dismiss it completely. And yet when you talk to Jim Coram, who also was a professor at West Virginia University, kind of interesting, both of them are from the same university, he measured every single parts of these. And he's trying to keep it quiet. That's the other problem with inventors. They tend to keep the best things secret. So then you wonder, well, how much is it going to take to bring you out into the public so we can start using this energy, you know? And I always ask how old they are, too. Because I've seen the older ones, when they get to be in their 80s, man, they just start dropping like flies. And then you've got the archives to deal with, which is another pain. So, so let's deal with them while they're alive, and we can still save their technology. And of course, this is one of them I'm trying to save. I'm trying to work with Jim so that we actually see a Wardenclyffe Tower reproduced, financed, built, and then start receiving. Because it's very valuable. And I wrote a book on it too. It's called Harnessing the Work of Nature. It's got Jim Coram's articles in it. It's got some of mine, the best ones I could find on Tesla. And here it is. This is the book I'm talking about. This was our conference. You'll see this picture in the cover. Ted Strain was an excellent videotaper and artist as well. So we did the best to bring all the people we could to celebrate the 1903 erection of the Wardenclyffe Tower. In 2003, this was our big dream to give some recognition to Tesla and of course for all the work he did. This is also available from the Tesla Tech desk that's outside here as well. So while we're on the topic of atmospheric energy, let me reach just a little bit further out into space. And at our Tesla conference, we also entertained Dr. Paul Warbos from the National Science Foundation. And his pet project, which also is part of the UN Millennium Project, is to resurrect what the Gerard O'Neill project was years ago, if anyone remembers the MIT professor who proposed this, and that is to have solar collectors out in space, convert the energy and beam it downward in microwaves. And of course, there's lots of concerns about the microwave spread and how many cows are you going to cook as you're beaming towards some pasture somewhere. But Paul is very optimistic, and of course, here's the website in case you want to learn more about it. So the exciting part of this is this opened the door for me to start collaborating, or at least exchanging information with him, and then it resulted in our continued communication on the issue of wireless energy. See, wireless energy alone, no matter how you do it, microwaves or the Schumann cavity, is still a big, huge solution and jump in imagination to the people who want to say, whoops, we got to fix the transmission grid. We're going to fix it whether FERC wants to fix it or not. Well, FERC's in charge, federal people, you know, they're the ones in charge, and they don't like rights of way, and the states don't like rights of way, and nobody's supposed to be paying for this except for the American people, but the utilities are the ones that paid for the transmission grid in the first place. So it's a roundabout circle, and I went to a conference, a all-day conference at the U.S. Energy Association talking about this, and everyone's depressed. The experts are depressed. And when the experts give up, you know, it's time for the little guy to start packing and consider alternatives. Centralized power is going down the tubes, I'm telling you. And I've seen the writing on the wall. So let me show you the alternatives, now that we know the facts. Now we know our future. As Gene Mallove said, Dr. Gene Mallove, we might as well give credit to the expert, he predicted transmission lines will be the clotheslines of the future. And I say just use them for backup, because the distributed power in your home, in your business, in your school is really where we're headed. And I'm going to show you the ones that look like the best lights at the end of the tunnel here. And the nuclear beta-voltaic battery is a good example. As I pointed out with polonium, and here's tritium as well, there are some nuclear substances that only produce electrons. They only produce electricity, in other words. Well, electrons just start shooting out of there for as long as you want, to like 25 years in this case. The tritium battery is one that Paul Brown designed and patented. And of course, then Lucent Technologies decided to steal it and patent it themselves. It was at a Tesla conference where we discovered this. It was fascinating. The Zenergy people come up with this patent to Paul Brown and say, have you seen this patent? They cite your name in here. They even had the audacity to cite his name, too. So Paul was smart. He got his lawyers to issue a re-exam. But see, all these legal issues, all they do is stop the technology. So this thing now is sat for